Hi, everybody. It's my pleasure to introduce Kert Browne. Kert is a software developer, has been working on the BigBlueButton project now for several years. A lot of stuff on whiteboard and a lot of stuff on accessibility, and especially actually accessibility. If you look at the VPATs and the accessibility audits that we have on BigBlueButton, behind there is Kert going through and just making sure that the product is as accessible as possible because our target market is education and we want to have the best accessibility. Kert is also instrumental in the integration of tldraw into BigBlueButton. It was 2 years ago, a little bit less, when we started looking at tldraw, and I approached Kert and I said, "Hey, Kert, I have this crazy idea. Could we remove the existing whiteboard and put this new whiteboard in?" And Kurt's usual reply is always starts off with, "Yeah, I think we can do it." And then I was like, "Okay, could you do a prototype? Could you actually show it?" And he came back with a prototype, and that convinced us in the project to take the risk and go to tldraw. And it was like a month or so, a year's journey to do it. But man, did we ever land with a much better whiteboard. So you're in for a really good treat because Kert has been taking what we've been has now tldraw 2.0 and seeing how far we can go down towards implementing Breakout Vision. Kert, I'll turn the virtual microphone over to you.
All right. So, as Fred mentioned, today I'm going to be going over basically what we're calling a breakout vision. So by the end of it, hopefully you'd have a better understanding of what breakout vision is, what we mean by it, and basically how tldraw 2.0 has essentially allowed us to make this possible. Because previously, with the other whiteboard, it definitely was not. So just for the agenda, I'm just going to start by going over sort of what the original challenges were with the current breakout rooms that we currently have in the application. It does work as intended. There's just a few pain points that certain people have had using it that we wanted to see if we could improve on. Once that's done, I'll just go over sort of what the breakout vision features are and some of the benefits of how exactly it can help or improve the sort of instructor's instruction during the class. And then I'll just go into a live demo showing the old breakout room setup, what it takes to get in and out of it, and then the new one, so you can see the differences. So just for some context in regards to the old breakout room setup, although they do work as intended, there were some reports that we got that users were having some pain points with the breakout rooms. There was some complaints about the breakout rooms just needing to be a little bit simpler to set up. Some of the menus may be hidden and a little bit difficult to find if you're not already familiar with it. And as part of the process of getting these breakout rooms set up and getting people into their rooms to collaborate, there was a little bit of an issue where basically students might not get the invitations to the breakout rooms that they need, or they may accidentally close the invitation, and that just causes some time gap in between when the user actually gets into the room to collaborate, causing a little bit of issues. And one of the biggest issues that the basically instructors had was the fact that when we use our current breakout rooms, it does send you off into a new tab in the browser. And if the instructor is anybody like me that has 1,000 tabs open at once, it's super easy to get that tab lost in the jungle of tabs. And then that just creates a bunch of issues trying to find it and get everything set up. So based on all the feedback that was provided and that we took from people using the application, we sort of honed in on three main ones. It was that there were multiple steps, and we wanted to reduce that because that seemed to be a pain point. Also, the user confusion with the tabs, that was a super big one. Just trying to minimize any sort of errors that could happen. So in this instance, we're trying to eliminate that by using tldraw and having everything built into the meeting instead of going into new rooms. And then another big one for the presenter mainly is the limited interactions that they had once the students were already placed into their rooms. Basically, once that happens, not only does the teacher have to wait for the students to get into the rooms, but once they do get into the rooms, it's a little bit tricky for the presenter to bounce in between rooms to interact with the students. I kind of liked to think about this in a real world sense, as though the teacher was in a real classroom and wanted to break out students and basically told them to go to a new classroom. And they have to essentially wait till the students get there and then manually go through each room one by one to interact with each class or group of people. So we're essentially just trying to reduce that process and just make everything happen a lot faster. So this is where Breakout Vision came into play. This was an extension of another demo that we had prototyped before called Whiteboard Vision, which was essentially the same thing, just it was individual. And we have since extended that to make it grouped. So instead of one per room, you can now assign as many users as you want per room and have all of that live within the whiteboard. So for this all to be possible, we did need tldraw 2.0, specifically the latest release that is open source. That does have some essential commits to make all this possible. Primarily the ability for us to create new shapes. And as Steve mentioned in his presentation, we can essentially now build any web element and have that render on our canvas as a new shape. So this includes any kind of interactive elements or pretty much anything that you can view on the web, we can now embed in our canvas on the whiteboard. So tldraw is basically essential to this whole thing working, and it integrates seamlessly considering we pretty much already have tldraw working generically in the client itself. So the whole goal for this is to basically simplify the setup of users getting in and out of groups and reduce the time that it takes for that to happen, eliminate all the extra tabs so that everything just happens in the same meeting that you're in, and to increase the sort of feedback that the presenter can give to the students while they're in their groups. And that comes with a lot of benefits. The whole quick starting of the group means that classes can get more done in the given allotted time. Breaking down the groups and starting them up just becomes that much more easier. You don't have to wait for anybody to do anything. It's all based on the instructor driving the functionality. There's a lot more oversight since everything's happening within the canvas. There's no other rooms to go to, so it's as simple as the instructor zooming out on the canvas and just getting a bird's eye view of pretty much all the students in their own groups and what they're doing. This leads to less errors because you can't get into a situation where the student might not go into their room for missed clicks or anything like that. It'll all just be forced by the instructor itself. So it reduces a lot of the errors and sort of bugs that can come up. And I will show you exactly what that looks like. Share my screen here. Okay, so if you can see my screen here, Freddie, you can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay. So here I have set up a demo meeting with one instructor and 4 students. Now, the old way to get people into breakout rooms, the instructor essentially had to find the option hidden behind this little gear icon, go to the create breakout rooms, set up whatever configurations they wanted, and then just move a student into a room and click create. Once that happens, the student was presented with an invitation. And this is the first step where issues can happen. If they accidentally pressed escape or something happened and they accidentally clicked closed instead, from this point, they wouldn't be able to get into the room. And chances are they wouldn't know how to get into the room once it's already been created. So knowing to go to this tab and joining the room was a bit of a pain point for the students. For the instructors itself, same kind of thing. It's just the sort of functionalities that they would need to start and stop the meeting and interact and oversee are kind of obscured behind certain menus. So even in this situation, to end the meeting, it would be difficult for you to figure out how to do that if you didn't know that the end button was basically hidden behind this panel menu. And it could take a few minutes or a little bit of time just for people that aren't that familiar to figure it out. So where Breakout Vision comes into play is we can basically do that same thing, but have everybody stay within the meeting, within their own tabs, and not have to actually do anything per se. So from the presenter's point of view, all they would have to do is enable a multi-user whiteboard for all of the users that would be taking part in the group sort of whiteboard activities, and then start the breakout modal. We could just say we want 2 people per frame and then 2 frames, and then just click start. And as simple as that, the students have all been moved to their own separate whiteboards. And you can see this, the presenter is still on the main whiteboard. So if I was to just make a red box here and say main, you'll see that this student does not get any update, nor does pretty much any of the other ones. But all they do see is that the instructor's cursor is around. It's not exactly on their whiteboard, but they can still see that they're basically just tending to somebody else on off Canvas. So once these students start writing, and we've broken them up into 2 users per screen, so we can just put U1 and just see who ended up in whose room. 2, 3, U4. Now you can see basically each user's in their expected room. They're in 2 groups of 2. And from the presenter's point of view, nothing's really changed, but they now have the ability to essentially turn on the infinite canvas and basically zoom out to see who's doing what. And you can zoom out to accommodate as many frames or as rooms that you've created. And you will basically see live updates of what anybody's doing on the canvas at that time. And the way that it works is the cursors still show up and are visible depending on what frame that you're using, and you're trapped within whatever frame that you're using. But for the sort of presenter's view, no matter where they zoom in and out, the cursors don't scale. So you'll always be able to tell who's in what room and when they're working. If they don't have their cursor on the canvas, then you'll just know that who's ever in that room isn't actually doing anything at the moment. And then you as the presenter can just zoom into any room that you want, make any kind of corrections, check marks, anything like that, and zoom back out. And it's basically as simple as that. Once you want to end the meeting, you can just go back to your main frame, as it were, turn off the infinite canvas, and end the rooms. And then everybody just jumps back to the main room with no invitations or anything. Everybody's none the wiser. They just get pushed to whatever group they're supposed to be in. And it's as simple as just doing whatever amount you want. So you can put everybody in individual groups, and it's basically the same kind of thing. Everybody moves to their own. 2, 3, 4. And then from the presenter's view, they can just come out and get a bird's eye view of pretty much all 4. And even though these cursors are overlapping, they don't actually get seen by other users because from their view, the cursors aren't zoomed in as much. So we don't have to worry about any collision with people getting into other people's frames. And yeah, that's pretty much that. Turn everything off and bring everybody back to the main room. And it's just that easy. You don't have to do anything more, and it's all pretty much built in. Now, just to summarize everything, the whole point of this was to try to make people's lives easier and just try to make the whole breakout room experience a lot more seamless using tldraw. and based on the capabilities that have been provided to us, we can extend this a whole lot more. Currently, we're just using frames, which is a default tldraw shape. But we now have the ability, since we can create any shape, to basically just add interactivity to the frames. So we can build UI around the frames to basically show who's in each group, and even allow for the dragging and dropping of users in between groups while still just on the canvas and not having to basically go anywhere else. So it's basically just showing how easy it is for tldraw to streamline the whole breakout room experience. And then the key features, namely no more tabs, real-time collaboration, and just easier oversight for the instructor to see what's going on within the classroom and to help anybody that's having any issues. Yeah, that's pretty much it. If anybody has any questions, comments, or suggestions, there's still a bunch of UI that's being developed around the functionality of how we want to manage these rooms. So that's still being looked into. And there are some sort of key things to consider if we do take this approach, namely the amount of frames all count as shapes, and each person drawing on the shape does add up to the amount of shapes that are allowed on the whiteboard. Currently, in the version that we're using, I think it's capped at 2,000, but I know based on Steve's earlier presentation, that number has significantly increased in the commercial version. But yeah, as for questions, users can select the room. We have not built the functionality to select the room, but the idea was to see if we could leverage the breakout room modal that's already there, and then use that to allow the instructor to at least change rooms, and then provide a way for students to jump between if the instructor lets them or moves them. So right now it's not automatically. And anybody that joins late just stays on the main frame and doesn't get put into any room. So in the case infinite canvas would be possible. So what would end up happening in this specific case is we could use the infinite canvas once the group activities are done, so that the presenter can essentially move the camera and show users what has happened, or basically what the other rooms did. You can essentially just pan over and basically show everybody outside of the main frame. I can actually show what that looks like here. So if I wanted to just enable only the infinite canvas, we could just move, and there would be frames here that people drew on, and the other users would be able to see just the same. And yes, the users will see what room they're in. We just haven't finished the UI on exactly how we want to display that information. But yes, they will be able to see that. Yes, it is also possible to persist the whiteboards. Because they're all shapes, they all get saved in Akka. So at the end of it, you can just recall all the data from Akka and basically get all the shapes back to see them later, or to save them to a PDF or something. But yeah, that's pretty much it. As of right now, the instructor, since it's all happening in the same room, the instructor can speak using just the general audio, and that just voices to the whole meeting and everybody will hear. So there will need to be some extra work to sort of provide a way for audio communication between just the instructor and the groups. But as of right now, the only way that the instructor would be able to do that is through the chat for this prototype anyways.
Oh, I'll make one comment. Jen just clicked enter there, but the different types of channel communication, the chat as well. Like if we broke out chat for the group, so when they're in that breakout room, when there's 3 of them, their chat would just be for those 3 people. So if we could extend the chat instead of doing private, but do group chat, we could then wire up group chats for each of the breakout rooms.
And if the client does reconnect, it will just automatically put them in whatever room that they were in when they disconnected. So they'll just go back to wherever they were. And there's a few other sort of quality of life improvements that we plan to make. So from the instructor's view, when they're zoomed out and they can see all of the other whiteboard frames, they can also essentially move those frames around to sort of organize them however they want to. And the viewers that are attached to those or assigned to those frames, their view will just move with the frame and they'll be none the wiser. It'll just look the same for them. Any other questions?
Kurt, maybe a comment on the infinite whiteboard. I think that like what you've done here for Breakout Vision is sort of on your computer prototype and so on, but the infinite whiteboard, can you comment on that and 3.0?
Yeah, so there is a PR already open to implement that. It's coming by default with only one sort of mode, as Fred mentioned in the chat, which is like a follow me type situation. So once it's enabled, all of the viewers in the presentation will just follow the camera of the instructor wherever they pan on the canvas. Right now, we're only handling infinite panning. The zooming is a little bit more tricky. We're basically going to have to unify what's happening there because essentially ACA has its own zoom values and tldraw has its own. And we're sort of mapping both of them to work together. Once we get rid of that and only have the tldraw camera sort of data being used, then we can basically handle the infinite zoom as well. And basically handle a little bit more of the functionality with the other cameras. It's adding other sort of modes instead of just follow me. So everybody can have their own independent view, essentially.
And so I guess to paraphrase, the infinite whiteboard will be there in 3.0 once the pull request merges in, and it will be behind a feature flag, so you'll be able to enable it. And there's still work to be done on the recording side. So if you do follow me, we'll want the recording to faithfully reproduce that. But we didn't want to hold it up. We wanted to get it into the product so you could turn it on and try it out. All right, Kurt, I think that was amazing. It's been a journey. We've wanted to do this, and I think this is probably your second or third prototype of doing Breakout Vision or Whiteboard Vision. But I think you mentioned earlier that each time it's easier, especially with tldraw 2.0, because the platform which we're building on is better and better.
Yeah, significantly easier.
Oh, I mean, this is awesome. So this is the path forward, is that we're going to continue to push what we can do with the whiteboard. And if we get to the Breakout Vision, and you've heard us say Breakout Vision, Whiteboard Vision. Whiteboard Vision is just Breakout Vision with n equals 1. It's just one user a room. But the fluidity of going in and out is what we're reaching for. The version we have today works. You can go between tabs, but we are really thinking about how we can make this even more powerful for the instructor to get like a bird's eye view of what's going on. And the whiteboard will give us that ability. So Kurt, on behalf of the community, thank you for an awesome demo and a lot of the cool stuff that you've done with the whiteboard and what we see ahead. So thank you. That was really good.
My pleasure. And thank everybody for coming.